Make co-host. There you go. Just a reminder, there's xLights around the world. I guess right now, technically, they're in waiting stage. They're hoping vendors will generate the sequences. I think they're talking late September, October before they would be released. I think they're looking for submissions too. So if you want to sequence it and see if it gets selected, I believe there's a little bit of process involved. You probably have to get the xLights around the world layout and work with that and build it based on that using the audio that they are suggesting for the xLights around the world. xLights around the world, by the way, is a thing that's been going on for probably 4 or 5 years, where they select a song or two now. Recently, they choose 2 songs, put it on your display, film it with your phone or whatever, and upload it to the website before Christmas. And they put it all together in one big collaboration video, and they post it on YouTube and give yourself 15 seconds of fame, or 1.5 seconds of fame, 2 seconds of fame, something like that. Anyway, anybody joining tonight expecting to see Dave Peace?
Recording in progress.
Anybody expecting to see David Peace tonight? Unfortunately, he had to cancel, but he said he'd get back to us next week. So come on back for that next week. Tonight, Mark Butcher is volunteered to teach a class, and he's from Vivid Sequences, and I pass it over to Mark. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Daryl. And so, yeah, you'll have to, you get lowly me instead of David, but this will be a fairly quick class, maybe probably less than a half an hour. So if anybody wants to run over to Wired Watts's, if you got in their free shot thing, he's doing a drawing, I think, starting at 8:30, and find out if you won something. So what I'm going to talk about is groups and groups. And usually when anybody comes into the Zoom room and they're having sequencing problems, a lot of times it's because they put groups in groups. So in general, you don't want to do it. And I'll just give a quick example why. Let me go to the layout. So I've got in this house outline plus windows group, you can see it's just made up of either submodels or models. There's no groups and groups. But I also made this one, groups and groups test. So this one I put my horizontals, my verticals in windows. So just so you guys know what we're looking at when we go over to the sequencer screen. And so here's generally why you don't want to put groups and groups. So if I have this bars effect, now I've put it on my house outline plus windows group, and that's how it renders. If you put the same effect down in your groups and groups, you can see it's completely different effect. So you're going to get something completely different from what the sequencer probably originally intended. Same thing with like shockwave, right? So here's a shockwave. It's placed on, it's using per model default, just right up here. That's one of the render styles. But if I take that same effect and put it on the groups and groups, you can see it's completely different. And just a third example to beat it in, here's a single line effect. And same thing, you get something totally different. Now, a few versions ago, the developers actually added something to help fix this issue if you have groups and groups. And it's this one right down here. It's the per model default deep. So it tries to drill back down to what you were trying to do. And you can see that fixes it and makes it match. Same thing with this one. If I change it. So there is a way around it, but best practice is generally not to put groups in groups. But there is a workaround. So now that we know why we shouldn't do it, I guess I want to show a case where it actually makes sense and you can accomplish something that you couldn't do otherwise. So we'll go back to the layout. And this, I just need to concentrate on the mini trees here. So I've got mini trees, I've got mini tree stars. And then I've got a group here called mini trees with stars. You see it's got each star, each tree, individual models. But I've also, up here, I have created a group, mini tree and star 1, mini tree 2, star 2, so on and so forth for all 6. And then I have another group. This is the mini trees with stars, but it's a group in a group. So in this one, it's actually made up of each individual group, and you'll see why this can become valuable. All right, so let's just start zoom in so you guys can see what's just is all we need to see is the mini trees there. So you can see if I drop this shockwave effect on this mini tree, it's just using the default render style. I'm sorry, it's actually on the mini tree in star one group. You see shockwave starts at the top of the star and then progresses down through the tree. So now I'm just going to move this down to my mini trees with stars. You change the render style to per model default. So now it's doing it on all of them, but you can see it's actually not doing exactly what we wanted. It's treating each prop individually. So it's starting the shockwave at the top of the star and the top of the tree at the same time and going down through. So it's not exactly what I had with just the individual prop. But if you take that same effect and you put it on the one they're grouped, that allows you to actually create that same effect that you get with one throughout an entire sequence. That way you can sequence on the group. All right, we'll do the same thing with the just to beat it in here. Another example, the pinwheel effect. All right, there it is, just on the MIDI tree in star one. Now we'll put it on the overall group. Now this is doing it. Same thing. We got to change it to put it on the per model. So now, but it's doing the same thing, right? It's splitting it up. It's doing star and tree separate. It's not doing them together. But if we drop that same effect down on this one, the group in group one, you can see now we get the same thing that we had on the single tree. We're able to do it on a group level. So it saves you from having to copy it 6 different times or 8 different times. So here's a single strand. We'll keep going here. All right, so if I bring it down here, you see now it's doing across the whole thing, but we'll put it on the group with group. All right, you can see it's the same thing that we've been having every time. It treats each model individually. And now we get it in a, now we can match what we were originally trying for. And the last example is this bars effect. So we're going to move that down. Same thing, we're going to change render style to per model default, so it applies it to all of them. And then now here, you can see now we get it very consistent groups, very consistent pattern of how when we're doing it on the individual prop. And this works with the mini trees and stars. It's going to work with, I imagine it would work with any prop where you're creating a model of 2 or 3 different props. I could think of, if you're doing like the popsicles where you have like the spinner and the bar at the top, or any of those. I've got a couple things I'm going to talk about in the layout, but I guess before we go on to that, is any questions on this part right here? All right, I'll take that as a no. So I figure I would just give a couple of layout tips. And I know we talked about some of these last week. Let me take the house and bring the house brightness up some here. So the first thing is whenever you take a photograph, you're never going to get it to, just the perspective is going to distort it. So you're never going to have everything perfectly straight. So when you're drawing your lines, you can see here, as much as I tried to get the my house level, it's not perfect. And anyways, in the gutters, obviously always slope anyways. So anytime you're drawing your horizontals, draw them straight, in xLights, keep them horizontal, and just try to best fit them. So I sort of split the difference. same thing with your windows, right? You know, at the tops of these windows in the picture don't all line up, but the tops of my windows do. And the way you can make that happen, get up to select it here. If you select multiple props, it might not work because they're locked. You can do right click, align, then you can align the top or the bottom. You know, it's the same thing with the lower windows. You want to use your house as a guide. You don't necessarily have to match it perfect. Because if you try to match the house perfect, when you have an effect that's moving up the screen, what's going to happen is you're going to get like a bars effect moving up. Everything is not going to light up evenly. You know, when people are out there looking at, they're going to expect the tops of the windows all to light up at the same time. They're going to expect this horizontal line to all light up at the same time. And if you match, you know, if I was to unlock this, so if I was to actually have this drawn more like, here, what's going to happen is when a bars effect's coming up, it's going to hit this part first, and this is going to light up, and then it's going to pick this up a little bit later, and you're going to see this delay. And you may not notice it as much in xLights, but you're certainly going to notice it out on the out on your house. So you want to think about, how you want it to display, right? Because xLights treats your entire house, your whole house display as a one big matrix. So just make sure you have those elements level and tied in. So told you it'd be quick, and I guess it was a little faster than I thought it'd be. Any questions?
A topic you can probably just touch on here in the groups. What's
Yep.
the importance of the ordering of the props in the group and left to right of the props in the group?
Okay, yep. So when you put your props in your group, put them in a consistent order. Like Daryl was mentioning, if you're putting all your snowflakes in, put them all in from left to right.
Do you want to click on your arches there, for example?
Yeah, I probably got
Nice.
my arches messed up.
Oh,
Let me
well, we're gonna catch your catch your layout then.
Let's see here. I go to the arches group. Did I do it right? Nope, I did it right. So I went from 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going across this way. If you have them in mismatched order, certain effects may not render as you expect. It may jump around a bit. So, it's the same thing. Think of everything. We try to tell people, when you're drawing your horizontals, draw everything left to right. Same thing with your props. Just put all your props in left to right. The same thing even when I did my my mini tree group here. You can see I did them in order here. And when I had them individually, I did them, tree 1, star 1, tree 1, star 2, tree 2. I probably could have done all the stars and all the trees. But you're going to want to be consistent. It's going to make your life easier, so you don't, you're not beating yourself, trying to figure out why something is displaying one way on someone else's layout and yours is looking completely different.
Other group tricks. Can you talk about your horizontal groups? And I noticed you've got a horizontal halves. Can you explain why you have that?
I certainly can. All right. So in this layout, so here's my horizontals. All right. And I have another one. It's going to look identical. It's called horizontal halves. And the reason I did that is because in my particular layout, I have these really long horizontals. And so in order to break it up and allow me, so now what I can sequence, half the time. So that's simply done. Let's pull the submodel screen. So I just have a left half submodel and a right half submodel. And if you have really long ones, you could split it into thirds. It's just a.
Can you explain how you did that? I'm used to seeing node ranges, so.
Normally I do it node ranges. I just did it with this. Yeah, instead of the node range, I just used a sub buffer, and you can just half. I can do left half, right half. I could have done, I could have done left third, and it would have been then that. So I just split it using this. because it was simple and I didn't have to think. But either way works. I could have done node ranges and plugged it in from pixel 1 to whatever, wherever my midpoint was. But yeah, I did it with the subbuffer instead. Probably, if I look. Right, there we go. Okay, here's my cancel. If I look at this one I broke up a little bit differently, I'm sure.
And while you're there, how did you segment it? Because you've got a polyline. So, okay, when you come back to that. So how did you put in the number of pixels for each of those polylines?
Want to do that first? Let's do that
Whichever.
first.
Yeah,
We'll do that first. So normally when you come in, if you draw a polyline, you're going to get, I don't want to uncheck it because it might break it. You're going to have to check this box that you're using individual segments, and then you'll be able to open them up, and then you can define. So in segment 1, I have 64 pixels. Segment 2 is this one, I have 38. And segment 3 has 7.
And you somehow included those in a group for your horizontals, or did you not? I
treat this whole thing as a single horizontal.
All right.
So when I have a horizontal, it's one of this is because it's more horizontal than vertical. If it was a much steeper roof, I might keep it in the verticals, but I made the artistic decision, you can say, to have that be a horizontal. We have a lot of freedom in this, so don't be afraid to exercise your vision of what you see. But and then, yeah, now for the submodel for this is more. Yeah, so this is more what so at the left side, I started down here, pixel 1 goes up here to 64, and then the right side was the left. In this case, it's not the exact middle, but from a sequencing standpoint, I find it to be a little more pleasing to obviously split it at the peak and not, the middle of this particular.
Can you apply the subbuffer on groups?
Pardon?
Can you apply the subbuffer on groups?
Yes. Yep. And yeah, because I do that actually. I have.
It's like let's say you have your all roof and you want to divide it into thirds.
Yeah, you're breaking. It's
Okay.
either breaking up or you're breaking up.
Show your house outline how you break it into thirds.
Pardon?
Show your house outline how you break it into thirds.
Yeah, I break it into I break it into halves, but yeah, we could do it in So I using.
No, I said at a group level, not at a model level.
So at the group level.
Yeah, can you apply subbuffers at a group level?
That I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay.
Scott's saying you cannot do it on groups.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
All right. I was going to say you can use
that would be a cool feature, because if you could do that, then you could take a whole group, divide it by thirds or whatever, and sequence that one.
You can do it in the sequencer that way.
You can't?
You can, just in the sequencer, you can edit your subbuffer.
Yeah. I was looking for another way to do it. That's all. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, but you can certainly obviously use them in groups this way.
No, it's not possible.
Yeah. But to show you, I guess, the reason, right? So we'll just do a quick, since we got a couple minutes here. So if I put let's just see. Let's see a little bit. So sometimes if you're sequencing, so that's on everything. If I put it, let me just do a per model default. So now it's going across each of the individual groups. In the halves just gives you a little more it breaks it up more. You know, I see a lot of houses where they've got the dormers and everything, and then, you know, you might not necessarily need to do that. You know, in this particular, my case, I find it useful.
For those people with a simple layout, simple outline of your house, it's a good way to add more activity on your house
Absolutely.
with a, you know, without having to do much more than
It's
a
free.
couple of submodels. Yeah.
You know, or you can get, you know, it just gives you, you know, it gives you, it gives you, you know, a little bit different effects. So
And since we're talking about groups, how would you put these groups in your list of sequences here on the left here, your edit display elements?
all right, that's a whole nother discussion.
I know we're challenging today.
That's all right. We'll go. It's all right, so let me just. Actually, let me just, I'm just going to do something here because I don't know if this is correct. So your master view controls how your sequences are rendered. So that's just like the master view controls. Now I have a saved one, I call it my master view, which is how I want my order to be. And I'm going to click make master in this case. All right. To match it up, but now we can at least talk about it. So you typically want your groups at the top and your larger groups, you know, let me start over. Groups at the top by size. So your biggest group at the top. So this is like, obviously, this is everything but the matrix, because in the mask, when a sequence renders, it's going to render this layer first, then it's going to come down and do this layer next and work its way down. And if something is in the sequence is on a lower layer in the master view, it's going to overwrite what's above it. So that's why, you know, if I have a whole house effect on.
Yeah, Mark, can you throw an on effect to be
Yep.
all in one color and then just drop another color below it, etc.?
So let's see. All right, so we've got, all right, so we got this on effect here, right? So, and I've got some rogue snowflakes working, but that's okay. Those come down here, and let's say the snowflakes, and I put a on, but I'm gonna have to change the color to white. So that overwrites it. And then technically, if you want to go further, right? If I go down to an individual snowflake and put an on effect, and let's just make that one green. So you want to think in your master view, it goes as it goes down. So you want to make sure this is in the proper order, I guess is the way, and think of anything that you want to be able to overwrite something else, you want it lower in the sequence. Something I do, I know a lot of other sequencers do. All right, they have this group down here. It's another all group, and it's at the very end, and that can allow you to do some, you know, different things. So, like for example, let me just let's put an on effect here. But all right, so that basically controls everything. So a lot of times you'll use this to fade out entire display, right? And not don't have to worry about putting fades on each individual element. I can come down here and put a fade, you know, use the black and put a fade on it, and it'll take control over the whole sequence. You know, you just duplicate it and you drop it at your bottom. And the way you do that, since we're here, let's go. If you right click here, you go edit display elements. And generally you can come over here and you can right click, sort. And usually we use, where is it? By name, but groups at top by size. That's a good place to start. You may want to tweak it a little bit after that, but that's a good place to start as far as setting your master view is this one right here. Mine's slightly different because I want, you know, as you get down lower in the list, it doesn't, the size, if they're not going to overwrite each other, it doesn't really matter what order they're in. And so I try to put them in little bit of a logical order for how I sequence when it's not something that's going to overwrite. Keep my candy canes together and keep all my windows together. So even if they're different sizes, I never, I'm not. I know my snowflakes are never going to overwrite my windows. So it doesn't really matter which group is bigger. I know my candy canes are never going to overwrite my snowflakes. So even though I think the candy canes actually have more pixels, I have the snowflakes.
So that's a
up
good
here.
point there. You have your candy canes at top, but if you decide that you want to do an angled effect, it will override any effect you have
Yep.
on the candy canes. And the angled and stripes, well, it's a toss-up as to which one you put. It doesn't matter. But you as a sequencer would probably not be putting it on both.
Yes, yeah.
Stripes and
Yep.
angled.
Absolutely. Yep. And these are Jackie's candy canes. He's got some excellent submodels and had all the groups, so it saved me a lot of work. So, but definitely, just this order is of critical importance. And let's see if I can remember this, right? There is file preferences, right? We go to file preferences. Is it other? I'm trying to remember. Sequences.
Oh, you don't even have it set. Oh, you're such a bad.
I have it. Oh, you know what? It's not. It's set in my other. This is my demo file.
All right.
So
I'll excuse
go
you
ahead.
then. So what were you going to show us here? Sorry, I took over.
Right. So here, there's this default view for new sequences. So if you set this, what I have is my master view is my default one that I want to use. So this means, if you set this here, every time it will set up your master view. So when xLights starts, it creates a master view that appears to be somewhat random, and it's, to the best of my knowledge, I believe it is in the order that you add props to your show, or to your layout. That's what it appears to be, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But so every time you make a new sequence, your master view is going to be could be in a slightly different order, or depending on what you're doing with your layout. So once you get your whatever you want to call your master view, you set this. Whenever you start a new sequence, it's going to be automatically do that for you, so you don't have to go in and make your master view and save it to your sequence. It just speeds things up.
Any other questions for Mark? Or even if you wanted to just have Mark demo a feature or something like that?
I do have a question, and I don't know if it's just my setup or what, but if you drop in the image, an image, which is right next to the pinwheel.
Yep.
The image effect.
What are we dropping it on?
It doesn't matter.
Let's just put it on.
And if you notice in
we'll put it on the matrix here.
If you notice in the effect setting window where you would go and pick your JPEG, your GIF or whatever, that is red. And if you click on browse and go find something.
It's a known bug. We just talked about it about half an hour ago.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know if
No
it was
worries.
just me or just.
No.
or-
It was a bug fixed the day after 16 came out.
Okay. Thought it was me.
No.
Usually
Actually, if you
red
hover
is.
over it, yeah, I know. If you hover over it, if there's an error, it actually says missing JPEG or something, but it doesn't. But yeah, it's been fixed.
It does this. Okay. It does it with it does the same thing with the video effect.
Yeah, anything. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it does it with a shader or not.
I got a question. Earlier, you had said that you want to line your props up, so that when the lights are going up.
Yep.
Had a question as far as where does it start that leveling out? Would it be at the bottom because you go from left to right, from bottom to top on the columns, or would that be because some houses might not have the same um, height. One side might be on a hill that would have a taller column than what would be on the left. So when you were saying it was actually showing, it would show it uneven and how it would go across.
Yeah, I think if you had something like that, then I would think I would want to, in that case, I feel like I would want to have the tops aligned. Because that way, because obviously your roof line in this case, this roof line here is level. So let's just say these columns are all different heights.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it would make sense that, if a column is lower, the lights would come on that one first and move their way up, but they should reach the top all at the same time, because that's your level. Think about what it could be different, case by case basis. It's just something to think about when you're doing it, because your viewers may not notice it, but my first year it drove me nuts, and I'm like, why when am I doing these effects coming up, it's not quite syncing up? And then that's when I had my aha moment. I tried to draw it perfect to the house instead of how I want it to display in real life.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Mark, could you touch on the red plus sign in the middle?
Sure. This is, in this case, it's the center of this horizontal half. So if you were to do a shockwave effect, this is going to be the center of that shockwave effect. So it's going to work its way out from there. If you do a bars effect, it's expanding, same thing. This is going to be a center point, and you can adjust that over here. Here's your center offset. So if I wanted to, if I don't like, if I know, let's just, I can either use the arrows, let's say 50 and 25. So now we can move it to where we think it should be, or how we think it's going to best represent our layout. Actually, these are big numbers, so okay. There. So now let's just say that's what I wanted to do. So now I don't want to save this too much. I'm going to mess up my whole layout and have to go to my backup drive. But so that's what that is. And each group will have that. So that's, here's your, so here's where it thinks the center of the layout is for all pixels. And what it's doing is just taking the furthest pixel from the left, which is this one here, the furthest pixel to the right, and finds the middle. And then the same thing, top and the bottom, finds the middle. So it's the same thing here. You might want to say, okay, I really want all my effects when I'm doing, when I'm doing all house effects, this is what, you can move your arrow around, and maybe this is where I want my center to be. Again, that's up to you. I generally leave it where it is and play with it in the effects. And what I mean by that is, come into the sequencer. Let's just make this a little longer. So we'll just drop a shockwave on here. Oh, so I see. All right. So I actually didn't save it. So let's give it some more. So because that's the center of the group, that's where it's going to emanate from. Now, if I had saved the settings in the layout window, we could have had it start from here. I didn't do that, but you do have the option here. Same thing. I can change it in here. Because sometimes you want to. It's just I guess 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's just a matter of how you want to do it. There's multiple ways to do it. No one is necessarily better than the other.
Mark, back in layout for a group, somebody want to know what tag color is. I'm not sure I've ever seen anybody use it. Can you change it? Maybe see where
Where's tag
where
color?
it shows up? Oh, back where you were in the groups. Right in the middle of the screen beside, click on a group, any of your groups. Just below your center, there's a black box that says tag color. Does Scott know
I'll
where?
answer that. Well, you do it. If you select the color, when you go to your sequencer screen, there will be a little square with that color in it.
Not
And it
for
helps you
groups
find
though.
props that
Is it? I don't see it.
Watch
It was
group
added
lady.
to, it was added to groups now, so it does it for groups and props.
So it's on my post groups.
Is it hiding? Or do you expand the group to see the tag?
All right, I'm going to add it on something that's easier to find. Let's go to
Put it on your all group or something?
house outline plus windows. We'll make it green. I'll probably got to save it.
Oh,
don't
did you click OK or something maybe?
I didn't save it.
Oh,
So.
that's what it was.
All right.
You're gonna mess everything
Up there
up.
it is.
Oh, there it is. So okay, once it's not black, it shows up. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, interesting.
And back in layout, if I'm not sure if Mark, if you know, great, but is Scott or John know? Is there anything for default layout mode other than minimal grid that we should be using? In any scenarios that can you think of?
I don't know that answer. So
I normally put all of my house outlines as single line.
So single line for any kind of house outlines, it's basically a single pixel height, right?
Yeah, it'll make a single pixel and it'll be the length. And if you do your order correctly, like if you're doing like how Mark has his,
Left to right, all
if he was to
contiguous.
make a group with this one and this one, if you do them as a single line and this is the first one and this is the second one, then the effects will kind of go across that as one giant line.
And if we did that, how would we test in the sequencer? Just drop a bars effect or something and see what it looks like with one setting versus the other?
Yeah.
And if you're happy with it, leave it.
Per preview and single line isn't going to be very different because they're relatively similar, but it will be a little slower because he's on angles. But if you ever have outlines like this and you put them in a group, I normally do, just in a group by themselves. I do that as a single line, and then you can do effects that kind of go around it.
So it
it'll
basically
chase-
flattens it out.
it'll chase up the vertical, across, and down.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I have not played around with the.
It's similar like
default
how
layout.
Mark was saying, if things don't go up together, you could set up like your windows. If you didn't care side to side that much, you could do like horizontal stacked or something, or vertical stack. And then these will basically all be at the same height when you do the stacked. But it will put them next to each other.
That's for Windows uses, I think. So.
Yeah.
the horizontal and vertical stack also works well if you have multiple matrices, especially column type matrices that you all want kind of displaying as one big thing without the space in the center. That works well, especially if you didn't take the time to perfectly align horizontally or vertically or make the same size.
Yeah, and there's also a horizontal stack scale they added like maybe a year ago. And the problem with horizontal stacked or vertical stacked, I can't remember which one's better. If you have like P5, like if you were to have a bunch of panels that are different resolutions or different sizes, they don't really work that well. But if you do vertical stack scaled, it'll kind of, like if you were to put this one and this one, it'll keep, the resolutions don't matter, and you could have an effect kind of go across all of your matrices if you wanted to.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thanks, Mark. You can-
Yeah, no, thank you.
Groups and groups and everything about groups.
Yeah, so yeah, like know the rules, and once you know the rules, you can know when to break them. That's the
And
important
Mark,
thing.
where can we find your handiwork?
My handiwork is at vividsequences.com. So appreciate everyone who's supported me. I'm